we're going to touch on the subject that is so meaningful to all of us, immortal spirits, mediumship. What is the Spiritist approach to mediumship? Its practice and its purpose in our lives. So I'm going to introduce Dan Assisi, who is the moderator for our next panel, and we'll reflect on the philosophical perspectives on the practice of Spiritist mediumship. Dan Assisi is an author and an international speaker known for his unique approach to spirituality that is steeped in reason to remind audiences everywhere of our spiritual nature. Yeah. He is a founding member of the Spiritist Institute, which I mentioned earlier, and of the California Spirit Association. And he hosts, with my friend Flavio Zanetti, the Spiritist Conversations podcast. Welcome.
It's good to see you now.
Yes. Sorry.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Are you doing good, or are you just saying you're doing good? Because that's what you're supposed to say. But I want to make sure that you're here in body and mind, because I know that you just came back from lunch. Right? So we are thrilled to have this panel for you, specifically tailored at talking at mediumship. We have three wonderful people that are going to come and be part of this panel, and we're going to introduce them for you. But before we do that, I wanted to set some context for you, right? So this panel is about mediumship, and we're calling it mediumship at the core of Spiritism. And why is that, you say, Dan? Why would you say that particular piece? Well, I think that is really key for us to understand here is that when we're talking about an event that is life through the lens of immortality, the immortality piece is pretty important. And how do we know that there is such a thing as immortality? How do we actually know that, right? Well, mediumship is that key for us. It is that piece of mechanism, that methodology that allows us to be able to really connect the dots between what every other belief system out there talks about and promises, the afterlife, but that's a promise. But with mediumship, we can bring that into the realm of evidence. And with doing that, it means that we have plausible explanations and concrete proof that there is indeed such a thing as life after life. And if that is the case, what does that mean to us? And what is it that we can do about it? We have also talked about the fact earlier today and many different events that mediumship is not an invention of Spiritism. It has always existed, perhaps under different names. We have called mediums high priests in ancient Egypt. We have called them shamans. We have called them prophets. We have called them sibyls. We have even called them oracles. The name is not as important as the concept behind it. So mediumship has always existed. So what is it that you might be asking that is so interesting about the mediumship perspective that Spiritism brings? Well, I think that Spiritism has really changed the way we see mediumship historically speaking. Whereas before the publication of this incredible book called The Medium's Book, published in 1861, mediumship was in the realm of the chosen few. Only the enlightened or the initiated had access to the knowledge that mediumship came about. However, when Kardec publishes this incredible book in 1861, the first treatise that I ever know that talks about mediumship in an open and rational way, it makes it available for everybody out there who wants to learn about mediumship to be able to understand it, practice it, and yield the fruits of that. So Spiritism comes to democratize the whole mediumship thing and takes mediums away from the pedestal of the sacred to make them everyday people, just you and me. And that ought to change the way we look at mediumship in general. And these three people here today are going to bring some wonderful insights for us on the Spiritist approach, on how we do the practice of Spiritism, and how that aligns to Christianity, because these are different things that we keep getting asked often, which is, why is Spiritist mediumship different than what I see out there in the world What is it that you guys do in your mediumistic groups, and why is that important? And is that really aligned with Christianity? Because you also talk about Jesus, but a lot of people are under the impression that there is a prohibition of mediumship in the Bible and the Old Testament, which is not the case. But to make sure that we tackle that, let's make sure that we bring to the stage the people that you really want to hear from, right? Not this guy. First of all, let's please welcome our friend Humberto Schubert back to the stage. You all have been introduced to Humberto before, so I will not belabor you with more of his great accolades, other to say that there are many of his books available out there, and you should make sure that you take advantage of that insight. But I also want to call to the stage our friend Jussara Korngold. Jussara is currently the General Secretary of the International Spiritist Council, the Vice President of our very own United States Spiritist Federation. But that's not only it. She's also the founder of the Spiritist Group of New York and the Spiritist Alliance for Books. She's an author, a speaker, and she's also a translator for many different languages. Thank you for joining us, Jussara. We're really glad you're here. And I'm not going to forget about the last one. I'm looking at you, Marcia. Can I just get a round of applause for Marcia, by the way, our wonderful friend, who's so thought and so intentional about everything she does. We have Rafael here. Rafael Rezende, can you please come to the stage? Rafael Rezende is currently an assistant professor of neurology at Harvard Medical School and Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. Or is it Boston? Boston. If you parked your car out there, I can't do it. I'm sorry, Sharon. I can't do it. That's pretty good, actually. And he's also currently an active and contributing member of the Allan Kardec Medical, look at me, Allan Kardec Spirit Society of Massachusetts, and he's also at the United States Medical Association, hence my double problem there. Thanks for being here, everyone. So what we're going to do here is we are going to go back and forth between these folks, and we're going to focus in 3 different areas. But I think it makes a lot more fun for us to do this and have them chime in and talk about mediumship with all the experiences they have. But I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that you too can ask questions. If you like to ask a question, write it down, give it to one of our assistants and helpers, and they will help us get it here on stage if we have time, right? And if not, we'll pile them up, like Marcia said, from our AMA question at the end. So let's start with Humberto, because he's gone before, so he's warmed up, right? So Humberto, you talked about obviously the Spiritist concepts throughout history and the old philosophers, and now we're focusing on mediumship. And we made a point that mediumship has always existed. What do you think is so special about the perspective that Spiritism brings to mediumship?
Is it working? Well, I think the main difference is that Kardec was really an enlightened philosopher, and he wanted to present mediumship through the lens of naturalism. That is, that mediumship would correspond to some essential natural laws, which he was not, he did not pretend to explain all of these laws, or even to know all of these laws. He was very aware that he was in the beginning of a new science, or a sort of science that would in the future explore the laws of nature that form conscience and thought and the possible interchange between this and the other worlds, other dimensions. And although we made very little progress after Allan Kardec in this field, he believed it should be the subject of scientific scrutiny, that we should investigate mediumship empirically and make progress in our knowledge about how it actually works. Not only believing in what he said about mediumship, or preaching, or preserving his teachings forever as a sacred book. What I like most in Kardec's work is that he had never the intention that his books would be considered sacred scripture, that we should follow blindly. But he was open to questioning and eager to see other groups developing different approaches to mediumship or to other spiritist subjects.
And along those lines, Roberto, how do you think that Kardec's approach and this more rational way help break this mystic feel of the special field, a chosen field that mediumship had and still has to this date a little bit?
Great question. Maybe it will take some time to fade away, because this mystic atmosphere is deeply rooted in our souls, in the way we saw and experienced mediumship for millennia. And now we, after only 150 or 200 years of natural approach and philosophical, rational, and also scientific approach to mediumship, we are just learning or making the first few steps in the direction of a more universal understanding of mediumship and how it actually works. So it may be that we have some psychological resistance and some structures in our souls that comes from the ancient age, and the prejudices and the way we interpreted mediumship in the past through symbolism and mysticism and religious dogmas and so. But we should not lose our hope that eventually our minds, our consciousness will adapt to this new bold and modern way of thinking about mediumship.
Great, and I love that you said that, because sometimes we can also draw a parallel and say that the way that Spiritists have practiced mediumship has also slightly changed with time. In the beginning, there's probably a bigger focus on evidential mediumship, on showing that the afterlife exists. But now it's a little bit different. And I also want to go to Rafael in a little bit on this one. But how have you seen that change over time? Because it seems like we have slowly gone up like a ladder of inference and start to get, so once we're satisfied with the existence of the afterlife, then mediumship becomes a different tool. Does that make sense for you?
It does, because in Kardec's philosophy, progress is supposed to happen. So it may not happen always, because we are limited and we create obstacles in our own minds. But the fact is that progress is one of the laws of nature for Kardec. So development and progress is something that we should expect in all fields, in all areas, and for everyone. Eventually, it will come to this or that area. And we see progress in the way we question the mediums, for example. Before Kardec, mediumship was not recognized as a natural faculty. It was seen as a gift, a special gift for the chosen ones, and divine gift, or a power that was directly linked to political power, to the authority of the priests, of the prophets, of the mystics, of the monks, and so on. And after Kardec, we started questioning the mediums. We have the habit, or we should have the habit of talking to a medium after the communication, and frankly saying, well, I think part of it may come from your subconscious. It is quite possible that this subject or this style comes from you and not so much from the spirit. And I have this reason for believing that, and I'm eager to hear your counter arguments. And there should be an open debate about that. After Kardec's age, Spiritist communication became more and more a means to solace, to provide consolation to people. And that's, to some extent, a cultural development. And it's also connected to the fact that Spiritism developed very well in Brazil, for example, and also very well in the religious aspect. But I think it is also an evidence that it's made some progress, that it changed through the course of time from the origins to what is needed in our days.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And with that specifically, with this idea of mediumship as a way to comfort those who are bereaved, perhaps because they've lost loved ones, Spiritism took a little bit of a step further, right, Rafael? And I'm going to come to you here, because we also realized that we can also counsel and comfort those who are not in the physical plane, but are in the spiritual plane. So Spiritist mediumship has a service aspect to it too.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how that is done in Spiritism?
Yeah. So first off, I just want to ask you, the audience, have you ever been in a Spiritist meeting, mediumship meeting? So it sometimes, I mean, it's hard, as we're going to touch some concepts here that most people were never present in a spiritual meeting. So the thing is, and this is a good thing, because first, all the Spiritist house or Spiritist center or groups that open this sort of meetings to everyone, I don't actually like it, because some people are not prepared to go and see things or hear things, or just go out of curiosity. So this is a very serious work that you need to take very seriously. And once you are there, and then you can help mostly the spirits that are not incarnate. So they're gonna be, I've seen mediums only wishing to have Bezerra de Menezes, for example, or Eurípides Barçanufo, or just maybe Holy Mary talking through them.
And just as a parenthesis, these are well-known spirits within the Brazilian Spiritist practice, for those who are not familiar.
Right. Or it could be anyone that you can think of here. Albert Einstein, for example. He could come and talk to me. So I don't want to open myself to other spirits. But in fact, those meetings, those group sessions, they actually help in spirits that sometimes don't even know they're in the spiritual world. And it's very common. So you go and you hear them saying, what am I doing here? Who is this? Who are these people? Who is this voice I'm talking to? And this is a point where we begin to help them. There's other people that participates in these meetings. We call, there's so many names you can call them. They're going to talk to the spirits through the medium, because medium, as the name says, is the intermediate between both worlds. So once you are having this manifestation, another person participating in the meeting is going to come and talk to the spirit and try to help them. So that's why this is an important point of the sessions, not only to help the incarnate, but also the ones that are suffering on the other side.
So that's quite a change, right? Because most of the time we think about mediumship being a tool for comfort of the living, but oftentimes it can also be used to help those who are, quote, quote, no longer living. Even though that's not true.
No, I actually it's the other way around.
Hmm.
So sometimes you have these meetings, the sessions we call, there's just for obsessed. Obsession, I know it's like a word that most people have heard, but there is some specific meetings where we go and you're trying to help the ones that are incarnated, but they're suffering from the influence of spirits that somehow never forgave that person. So those kind of situations helps to help both. But when you're there and the spirit is there and it's brought by the community of other spirits that coordinate spiritually those meetings, and they come and you talk to them and and somehow you clarify things. um, so this is, in my point of view, a way to help a way more the ones that are no longer here than the ones that are actually here. So that's based on the experience I've been seeing, and the suffering is a lot. I mean, just an example. Once I was in a meeting, and there was a spirit that came and begin to ask, "What are those vehicles in the streets? What was going on? What is those noise? What is that? What is going on?" Then we start to talk to them, to the spirit, and he's actually from the period where he was living in Egypt, in the ancient Egypt. So he didn't know anything. He was stuck mentally in a mono idea for thousands of years, and eventually got to the point where he was prepared to break that mono idea and eventually open himself up to the reality. So that's it. You see how beautiful those sessions and how important they are.
So that's a great way for us to kind of shift perspectives a little bit, right? Because we have generally been exposed on TV to a medium as somebody who brings messages from loved ones and it's a very cathartic piece. And all of a sudden, you're talking to me and telling me that there's actually a big service component, whereas the mediums are serving as a conduit for people who are suffering or who are confused. So, how does that change our approach, at least in the Spiritist perspective, to becoming a medium and the job of the medium?
So one thing that is interesting here in America, I think everybody watch shows and you see those mediums really like weird people. Sorry about that, but that's how they show themselves.
We're
But
weird too sometimes.
yeah, that's true. But the thing is, and you see them, you see those people that just lost someone in the family, they just want to be comforted, and they go to these mediums. And by the way, they pay them. That's another point. That's ever never should be charged. So, but anyways, they go and they want to ask about, the family. And, Chico Xavier used to say something that really important, which is like the phone rings from that side to this side, not the other way around. So if you go to a medium and ask, "I want to know about my dad who passed away 5 years ago." So, and then the medium, "Okay, I'm charging you $500, so I have to tell you something." And that's where the problem starts. And you never know if actually what is manifesting through that medium is actually your father, your mother, your brother, sister, whatever. So becoming a medium is not something that I say, "I want to be a medium." It can happen anytime in your life. In my case, for example, it happened since I was a child and nobody could understand what's going on to me. So it was more like a suffering because my family were Catholic. So those that are living right around the church and priests are always in my house, and I couldn't talk to them as I was seeing that people. So in that case, it it's you don't choose it. Maybe you chose it before you come back, but when you're here, it can happen at any time. So once it happens, then you need to be ready to work and work for Jesus. That's the first thing, and helping always have in mind that you're helping other people. The only difference is they don't have a body, a physical body, but you're helping them to see the light, to go through their path, and eventually to become happy again. So that's the whole point.
Great. And then maybe I can throw a curveball to Josada here on this one. Josada, we're talking about mediumship, and is just one thing the same thing all the time. Can you talk to us a little bit about the nuances of mediumship and what kind of types of mediums we potentially have and how that works?
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome.
Is the microphone on, Rosada? Let me see.
Hello. Yeah, now hello everyone. Welcome back to the session afternoon that we have here at our symposium. And there was so many good things that our friends here have talked about the subject. And I'm trying to, gathering all my thoughts and all the things that I could be talking up to you about, mediumship and all of that. First thing that came to my mind is that, except for my husband, that is really very tall, I think we all are mediums here. So
I'm extra large.
yeah, please show yourself how tall you are. And anyway, so this is something that we all have in common when we are talking about mediumship. And one of the things that I was thinking is that there is one of the greatest fears that we have in life is the fear of death. And talking about mediumship implies death. I mean, the word per se that Kardec utilizes as me being the intermediary, as we being the intermediary between two worlds, one that we consider the world of the living and the other one that it should be the world of the more alive than we are, but we call for, in different, using different terminologies. And so can you imagine how hard it has been for us throughout the ages to have to accept communication? Because to accept communication, I have to accept that there is death, and that there is continuation of the dying in a way, and that there is a way of this dying can communicate with me. And truth be told, sometimes we don't want them to be talking to us anymore, right? We barely want them, some of them talking to us now, imagine later on. So to have to deal with this concept, it's not just talking about death, it's talking about the continuation, is implying reincarnation, is implying a system, a possibility that was so well researched by Allan Kardec. Because he didn't want to stay in the commonplace that was being presented throughout the ages, that with whatever rituals, whatever sort of belief you would have, that would be a way for you into summoning this, world of the dead into getting into communication with yourselves. And he tried to classify that in a way that would make sense, that, okay, if there is death, if there is no death, there is the continuation, that this mortal spirit, what happens, how this happens, how do we continue, how can we communicate, where so beautifully he put it into the world psychography, psychophony, psycho, meaning the communication of minds through writing, graphic, or to the voice. So we are talking about minds, the survival of the mind, the survival of the spirit, and the ability that we have beyond our physical body to communicate, because this is something that is going to be commonplace in the future, whether we like it or not. I mean, from this side of the stage, I literally can look at some of you and know what you're thinking. And I don't have to be a medium for that. I just see, how your eyes are shining or not. You seem pleased or not with what I'm. This is the communication that we are talking about. So mediumship, in the sense that Kardec explored in, he said, listen, we are not talking about phenomena anymore. Mediumship in the Spiritism It's not about phenomena. It's about the eternal living. It's about us as spirits can establish this line of communication, whether we have a corporeal physical body or not. And I think it's so fascinating when you think about it. And I was remembering when Umberto was talking about, the prejudices and all that, and the history, and how we should pursue mediumship or not. Also, since I was very small, I had those perceptions. I had this ability of sensing things, and was always curious about all of that. And I remember that there was a tradition in our family that we had parents that lived in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, and we would go there for every New Year's Eve. And for those who are familiar with that, you have all this celebration at the beach, and then all this Mãe de Santos there, and all, of this African rituals that we also have in Brazil. And of course, being interested, I guess at the time I was like 10 or 11, I don't know. I went to talk to one of them. And she had all those, white dresses and colors, and she was holding this position. And she looked at me and she said, "If you want it, I can bring your spirit to talk through you here and now." I was in Copacabana, and I think I ran to Leblon or something, because I was so afraid. Was not what I wanted to become. But little did I know at that time that was just a fragment of representation of what mediumship is. And this is what Spiritism is all about when we are talking about, let's change our concept. Let this mythify mediumship and think more about the possibilities of the mind.
And let me barge in here too, and say, you're talking about different perspectives, African traditions, and so forth. But, we often hear from our other brothers and sisters who are perhaps in a different branch of Christianity, saying that there is no place for mediumship in Christian practice, that is actually a bad thing, right? So how can Spiritism help reconcile that and show that, in fact, we see tons of mediumship in the Bible, first in the New Testament?
Well, it's one thing very much like when we talk about reincarnation, whether we like it or not, whether we believe it or not, we'll come back to see. You see, mediumship is the same thing. It's not a thing that we should be running about it. And there are so many controversies that we find in the holy texts, because we see Moses performing what is called to be miracles, and others, talking to the voices and hearing the spirits, but all of a sudden, some of them are allowed to do that, others are not allowed to do that. Some people that were considered to, because of the way of their living or following certain religions, they would be considered more saints than the others. They would be embalmed or not, considered, as Christian saints. The thing is, we know very little. And I think one of the things that it's very important that we have in the Spirit's book, when the question and answer, when it says that we were all created unenlightened and with the same future. We are all children of God. So regardless of what we are at the present moment, we all have the same destination. But I cannot convince, and I should not. This is why not why we are here. Convince anyone to be thinking the way I'm thinking. Everyone has their own course. This is a self-discovery journey. I mean, I can give you indications. Actually, you can have it in my book, Inner Transformation Outside, available by the United States Spiritist Federation. Anyway, but you can have some guidelines, a little roadmap. But I mean, it either way, you have to do it. It's not that I'm going to look at the recipe and magically the recipe is going to materialize in front of me. I'll have to buy the ingredients. I'll have to mix up everything. So this is how we should be looking at scriptures that we have. And I think it's always very fascinating, but at the same time, not narrowing our mind saying, look, they were all wrong. Maybe I am the wrong one because I'm still insisting on interpreting them in a certain way, and they were all the time trying to tell me something different. When Jesus told me, love your enemies, he didn't explain about obsession, obsessors. So now that I know about the spiritual continuation, I know about spiritual attachment, I know that, yeah, I should make efforts to be, good with everyone. Now it makes sense. It is not in my own interest to act in this way. So there are so many things, and I think we should never discard them just because we will think that we know better. I'm sure in 2,000 years, we will look back in the same way that we are looking back at people that lived 2,000 years ago and saying, oh, they were barbarians. So let's embrace everything. Let's try to understand as much as we can. And let us be just, very careful with what we are looking as for when we are choosing things and people and knowledge to guide our paths. I think this is the key now, being really selective in choosing. And this does not mean discarding the rest, but knowing that since we cannot embrace everything, try to choose the best that you can and let the other things fall into place according to time.
Thank you. And what you were saying there is actually biblical advice, because in the first, but check this out. I'm going to connect the dots, hopefully. There's actually, First John has a great mediumistic recommendation when he says, beloved, believe not every spirit, but judge whether they are of God. For false prophets, the false prophets piece. So you want some great mediumistic, suggestion is, don't take anybody's word for it, whether they're living or not, right? Try it out and see if it makes sense, because, right? So I think what Josiah was saying about the critical thinking piece is really great. There's a question here, and we can kind of shortcut this one a little bit. You can come talk to us afterwards about what passages of the Bible prohibit spiritism or mediumship specifically. A lot of stuff in the Old Testament. Leviticus has a couple of instances in which that happens. We will caution you too, because new translations have used words like beloved, beware of mediums and spiritists, which is fascinating for me, because the word mediums and spiritists did not exist in Leviticus times. So they're clearly reinterpretations of what people said. But if you want passages, we can talk about that later. But I want to say some of the great questions we have here for our people. And I want to go to you, Rafael, a little bit and say, are we all mediums? And so how do we develop it?
We are all mediums, believe it or not, if you want or not. So the thing is, what we actually call mediums are those that we call ostensive mediums. So those mediums are actually, you see, like you think about Chico Xavier, you think about Divaldo Franco. So all these mediums that, psychograph, or they see, they tell things. So these are actually not all of us, but we are all mediums in the sense that we are created by God. We are spirits when we are incarnate. So in that sense, we are all always communicating with the spiritual world because we belong to the spiritual world. So that's where our house is. And every night when you go to bed, you're actually practicing your death. So that's the point. Sometimes it's scary, but every time you sleep, your soul kind of moves a little bit out, and they're going to be in touch with the ones that you love or the ones that you're more attracted to. This is, it's a property, it's a faculty. Some people develop it more And I wouldn't say, I mean, I want to be a medium. Good. So you can try it. But in that sense, you need to work a lot in a good way, trying to become a better person, because that's the type of medium you want to be. Not mediums that are somehow perturbed, that ended up in, in places where you don't want to be. So in that sense, if you want to become a medium, if you want to work as a medium, so try to become a better person. Try to change the way you live. Try to change the way you see things in the world. Beginning to forgive, that's the biggest point. Beginning to love more. So then you acquire this ability eventually to communicate with the spirits. But the ones that come with this mediumship in the way that it's so strong, usually it's expiation, or you did something wrong before. So you come and you have to use this to kind of speed up your recovery. So in that sense, I say that if you're a medium in a way that you consider mediumship, it's like, am I a very good person? What am I doing? So, but answer your question a short way, yeah, everybody's a medium. Some people will develop it more. Some people will never, are scared of seeing things. I don't want to be a medium. I don't want to see dead people. If you want to become one, you're going to see it. Doesn't matter how, but you're going to see it. So
It's
how
hard
it
to
is.
counsel the spirits on how to do things if we're not doing them themselves, right? It's the do what I say, not do what I do, right?
Exactly.
So we got two more questions, and I want to go back to Josada for a quick one. Josada, a minute or two. Can you help us figure it out here? There's a question saying that some folks are like, they're shocked to learn that the spirits who do not know that they have passed on, that they're dead, right? Some of them. So that's shocking for some people. What can they do to prepare themselves so that they're not one of those on the other side?
I think everything starts with, the instructions from Jesus. Love and instruct yourself. So I think we have to go after knowledge and after understanding. And sometimes, it's very common for us to find people that, because of course we cannot give you all the answers. We don't know all the answers and we don't know the details if we want to know exactly what happens when we pass, because to each person is going to be an individual experience. But this doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And so that people that are very radical in the sense that they want to know the details, when we can only offer, the general idea, you're immortal, you go on, and there is an incarnation, and then we go. So I think it's always to be open, to have an open mind, to contemplate things that perhaps you will say to yourself, I still do not know all the answers. I still do not understand all that. But it's not because I do not know all of this that I'm not going to consider that this is not a fact. I normally say that I have some drawers in my brain where I put some things, the things that I do not understand, instead of having a kind of preconceived notions or being prejudiced against some ideas. I'll say I don't have the necessary facts to judge that. So I don't know whether this is true or not. I'm not going to accept, but I'm not going to reject as well. I'm going to leave it here in the back of my mind. And one day when I know more things, I can make a reassessment on those things. So I think a very good thing is to just start contemplating the idea that, yes, we are immortal. And when it comes to a point where we are going to find ourselves in a different scenery, and that nothing necessarily looks that familiar or makes so much sense, you will say, well, maybe I'm dead. But since that does not exist, I'm someplace else. So let's be adventurous and explore.
So we're coming to an end of this panel, but I want to remind you that we have opportunities for you to ask more questions, and we'll have a panel at the end too. And you can always, accost this lovely people during the outside when there's not a session and ask them questions. But I want to go back to you, Humberto, right? Because For me, mediumship is at the DNA of Spiritism, right? In the DNA of Spiritism, there's mediumship imprinted everywhere. It started with the exploration, with the inquiry, which is very Spiritist. Like Spiritism was born out of inquiry, of asking questions through mediumship, so that we can learn more about the other world and therefore this world as well. Mediumship is amazing. It's open source, it's collaborative. Anybody can add to it. But mediumship has a central role in Spiritism. We cannot have Spiritism without spirits, right? And mediumship is it. So given the fact that Spiritism is dynamic and is always growing, our understanding of mediumship is always growing too, and it should be practical. What do you think the future of mediumship look like for us, not only Spiritists, but the world in general?
I think it would be great if the future of Spiritism and mediumship should look a bit more like its past. So if we should reconnect to the work of Allan Kardec, because this idea that some deceased people could not realize they were already dead is something that Kardec did not conceive previously. He never imagined this hypothesis. It was something he learned empirically. So questioning, interviewing spirits through the mediums, he realized that a strange pattern existed that he could never dream of, which is the fact that many spirits, several spirits, could not perceive, could not realize they were already dead. There are other examples. For example, Spiritism says the spirits interfere in our dreams. That could be a dogma, that could be an hypothesis, a theory, but he tested it in different contexts through mediums and checked if the other cultures had similar concepts. And in fact, there is no culture that does not present this belief that spirits interfere in our dreams, or that spirits cannot manifest in apparitions. And he realized that bad spirits, ignorant spirits, they would interfere in our dreams, creating suffering and discomfort and frightening us, while good spirits would encourage and strengthen and teach us something. Well, that also happens in Buddhism, for example. We have hungry spirits that frighten us or that cause discomfort. And we have the Avalokitesvaras and the Buddhas that produce great comfort and enlightenment. And in the Catholic Church, for example, we have demons producing bad dreams and discomfort, basically, and angels and saints, or the Virgin Mary in luminous apparitions that produce great satisfaction, or that somehow teach us something or give us advice. So there is a pattern across cultures, and that was the main interest of Allan Kardec. It is relevant that we come back to this notion of identifying if what we are talking about has any relation to a pattern in nature.
Thank you, thank you. Help me thank our panelists with a warm round of applause. And we hope that this spikes your curiosity so you can continue the Spiritist pursuit of knowledge in the journey of understanding mediumship. Thanks very much and have a great day.